I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The more you talk, the harder I want to hit you.
I'm happy because of being here today. Fuck you.
Come on, you want me to drive? No, you're supposed to be suicidal, remember? I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Let's get in the car.
Fucking shit. Fuck me in the fucking ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with the brand new movie review. This review is going to be for the second installment in the spin-off series that's part of the review series we are doing, and that is for none other than 2018's Creed 2, which is not directed by Ryan Coogler, and this time around is now directed by Stephen Cable Jr. And this one, in a way, is kind of the closure to the events of Rocky 4. So what's the plot of Creed 2? So, years after Adonis Creed made a name for himself under Rocky Balboa's mentorship in the first Creed, the young boxer becomes the heavyweight champion of the world. While life is good with that victory and his marriage to Bianca, trouble comes to Philadelphia when Ivan Drago, the Russian boxer who killed Apollo Creed, arrives with his son Victor Drago to challenge Adonis. Adonis goes against Rocky's advice and accepts the challenge without his mentor's participation, and he pays the price. In a punishing bout, he wins only by technicality. But now injured, Adonis cannot bring himself to back into the game, and his spirit title are in jeopardy. So Adonis' family and Rocky have to find a way to rekindle Adonis' fighting spirit to face the future in whatever choice he makes. Meanwhile, the Drago family has its own troubles, trying to regain the respect of their homeland after they lost at Rocky's hands, as they wonder if it's truly worth it. So as for my reaction, now you all remember my original thoughts on this movie? Well, revisiting this one, does my opinion on this movie change like it did last time? Well, no. Surprisingly, my opinion on this one still remains the same. But I think the only thing that does change is that, honestly, I think I now prefer this over Creed 1. To me, personally, it kind of better fleshes out Creed a little bit. It actually does make him suffer some consequences for his arrogance this time around. And to me, it does better with Rocky. Where unlike the first one, where the only plot Rocky really got in the first Creed was get cancer. And that was it. But this film, it's shown he's beaten his cancer now, and it actually this time finally plays a bit more of a role in the mentor part of this story. And I like the idea of Rocky and Creed kind of having to kind of deal with the aftermath of 4 and seeing Drago come back. Seeing the Dragos come back. So how was this film made? So it was around January 2016 when a Creed sequel was confirmed. But it got delayed because the director Ryan Coogler and Jordan faced scheduling conflicts because of Black Panther. Coogler was originally replaced by Stallone, who completed the screenplay by July 2017, but he got replaced by Capel that December, and Coogler instead served as an executive producer. The rest of the cast, with the returns of Thompson, Rashad, and Lundgren, were confirmed by March 2018. Filming began from March to June on location in Philadelphia. Then, after the movie, Creed 2, was officially shot and marketed, Creed 2 would premiere on November 14, 2018 at the Lincoln Center in New York City and was released in the United States into theaters by MGM and Warner Bros. On November 21st, 2018. When the movie came out, it did get positive reviews, not as much as the high-acclaimed Creed did. They liked the performances like Stallone, Jordan, and Lundgren, the character development, and Capel's direction, but some noted the predictability. And it was a success at the box office, made over $214 million worldwide, and was the last appearance of Rocky Balboa because Stallone had officially retired the character. And of course, it got Creed 3 5 years later, which is going to be the next and last review of this entire review series. So here are the good qualities in the story of Creed 2. So, Capel was handpicked by Coogler to take on the sequel. Well, but Capel orchestrates this worthy sequel and has some references to the Rocky franchise that fans can crave, or either some who aren't fan of nostalgic baiting would probably not like, but some would probably like the references, and makes a point to build up Adonis' own story. Also, the movie doesn't really focus too much on boxing. This one turns more to the kind of the deep-rooted drama that happens in the Rocky movies, like why fight, why the guilt of like not calling it the Apollo Creed Ivan Drago fight that Balboa is still remembering. And Balboa doesn't want to remember that, but Adonis still wants to avenge his father, which Rocky tries to talk him out of doing, but Adonis then kind of just ignores him and almost suffers the same fate, but he luckily survives. He just gets injured, really, and Creed is now kind of a little scared to fight for a little while and try to focus more on family life this whole movie. It's not really till the kind of near the climax that he decides to finally try to re-challenge Drago's son. And you get a subplot with the Dragos having to go through their family struggles. And it leads to an impasse between the two that causes soul searching for both men. Creed 2 does give us a training montage, and some fights when they do happen that are a part of the Rocky franchise, but what stands out are the things that happen outside of the ropes in this movie. It starts off as a revenge tale, but then it actually evolves into a story of father's sons and the villains and new legacies. Some may have probably wanted the revenge story better, but I like they didn't go a generic revenge story, and they decided to just do two stories of father and son, with both the Dragos and Creed and Rocky. At its core of the work is Michael B. Jordan, who again, as Creed does deliver a performance that really, in the same performance that actually kicked off his career, led to more kind of fame. His character does get matched with his talents in a package that any dreams can happen. And the chemistry between Jordan and Thompson, sure, the romance still didn't play much of a role in Creed 1. In Creed 2, it feels a little more believable here. And Stallone, once again, as always, delivers in the role of Rocky that defines his career, especially since this is the very last time he portrays the character. And it's a good time to kind of retire. And this was a kind of a nice movie to retire the character on. What else could you do left? He's already passed the torch by this point, so there's nothing left to do. You can't have him go back to fighting. He's retired. He was just here to pass the torch. He successfully passes the torch in this movie, and then he just goes back home with his son. So for the rest of his retirement. Now, how do we start off Creed 2? So, this takes place 3 years after his loss to Ricky Conlon. Adonis Creed, alongside his trainer Rocky Balboa, who has successfully recovered from his cancer and got the treatment off screen. He has now won 6 bouts and has a victory over Danny Stuntman Wheeler to win the World Heavyweight Championship and reclaim his 1967 Ford Mustang, which he had lost to Wheeler in a bet. And of course, he's now a worldwide star, kind of like what we saw at the beginning of Rocky 3. Adonis proposes marriage to Bianca Taylor, and she accepts. And Bianca suggests they should start a new life in Los Angeles, but Adonis doesn't really want to leave Philadelphia or Rocky behind. Meanwhile, back in Ukraine, Ivan Drago, the former boxer that killed Apollo in Rocky 4, was living as a recluse since losing to Rocky, and he wants to regain glory. So he's assisted by this promoter named Buddy Marcel, and he pits his son against Adonis. His son is named Victor Drago. So Rocky, out of fear, and pretty much he visits Rocky, and pretty much tells him that at his restaurant, Adrian's. And Rocky, though, becomes fearful of Adonis suffering the same fate as Apollo, because he still remembers when he should have called, but regrets not calling off that fight with Apollo and Victor, and pretty much the events of Rocky 4, just when he kind of thought he could finally recover from the events of Rocky 4, this has come back. He's now meeting the same foe that killed his friend in 1985, having to face that again, and he refuses to support Adonis' acceptance of Victor's challenge, but Adonis leaves for Los Angeles, decides he's going to try the fight anyway, and you know where this is going to lead up. And it's going to lead to one of Adonis' biggest mistakes yet. And this big mistake actually does start to kick off his improved character development after this. Where in the first film, he was not bad as a character. There were times he was kind of a little too prickish in the first film, while he did have some higher character development. And this one, I feel he's better written as a character in this movie and Creed 3. That's one of the reasons why I like Creed 2 and 3 over Creed 1 more. Yeah, Creed 1 is a film I did used to really love, but I revisited it, and while I don't think it's a bad movie, it's still a decently good movie. It's just not as great as I once remembered it being. And I could see some people probably don't like it. But now back to Creed 2. This film is about true family values and how much more important they are than anything else in life. Sure, the boxing scenes are still great, but they're just an overarching theme of family in this film. I like what this one kind of does with the plots. It's this time around, while Rocky does take a bit of a secondary position in the film, like here, while Dolph Lundgren is back, he does take a bit of a secondary position in the film, but it's nice to see him back again. Like in remember Rocky 4 when he was that killing machine? That was kind of the steel monster, but here, because, the Drago was a lot older now. He's retired from boxing too. So now we kind of get a bit more of his non-machine side and what the loss kind of did for him and how he's trained his son. And I think the Dragos are the best part of the movie. And also, Florian Martineau, who plays Victor Drago, is also pretty great. He captures a steel monster that his father is almost raising him to be, to carry on his boxing legacy, and plays so much drama and intensity in his expressions. And a scene with him and his father at a dinner table is where you see him looking for approval there. The film is definitely extremely smart and fun. The fight is built up for the entire film, and the payoff is satisfying. The color stuff here is intelligent very well. You got blues and grays and scenes with Dragos to show how harsh and cold the Dragos environment really is. And you got the little orange stuff in Creed scenes because of how warm and comfortable the Creeds' lives are. This is the thing. People liked Victor Drago, so people liked Ivan Drago in Rocky 4, so it's clearly we should bring this guy back. We should start exploring him again, which people recognize because a lot of people consider Drago the best antagonist of Rocky. So we get to see him, and we see his son. At first they're back for revenge, but then their revenge story turns into a different story as well. Donnie Bianca's journey in this film is actually much more well handled, because Michael B. Jordan once again turns in a great performance. And now Rocky doesn't have still much to do here, but even he's still better utilized in this one. So, in this one, after Adonis decides to try that fight, Adonis and Bianca go to this apartment in Los Angeles that's close to Marianne's house. And they adjust to their new life, and they prepare for the match. And then Bianca finds out she's pregnant with their soon-to-be daughter. Adonis then recruits Tony Evers, the son of his father's trainer, and later Rocky's trainer, Tony Duke Evers. A.k.a. his son's name's Little Duke Evers, to start training him. But unfortunately, Adonis becomes overwhelmed by his life's recent developments, and he rushes into the match unprepared. And because Ivan has trained Victor very well and got him ready for the fight, he pretty much tells Victor to break Adonis. And while he doesn't kill Adonis like Ivan killed Apollo. He just badly injures him, and he gets disqualified for hitting Adonis while he's down. Adonis is still able to keep the heavyweight championship, but Victor becomes popular in Russia and wins a series of fights with top billing. But even though he still got the heavyweight championship, his body and ego get shattered. And Adonis is now still traumatized from the fights. He gets disconnected from Bianca, then Marianne contacts Rocky about what happened, and him and Adonis reconcile, and they decide to train for a rematch against Victor, who, on Ivan's hands, is suffering many torturous tests. And meanwhile, as this is happening, during the fair a little bit, the rest of the movie is just more slowing down. He kind of trying to get his strength back. and focusing a bit more of his personal life, and how Rocky sees Adonis's personal life, and Bianca gives birth to a daughter named Amara, and her and Adonis named Rocky her godfather. Amara gets bored deaf though because she inherited her lack of hearing from her mother's progressive hearing disorder. Right there, so this one you actually get a little bit of a break from the boxing. You don't see too much of the boxing here. Because I kind of like this one goes more drama. You know, like we did see a bit more boxing in Creed 1, so let's see a bit more of the drama side with Creed 2. And like Rocky 4, the movie does put an impact on how dangerous the Dragos still are, even though Ivan's not the one fighting anymore, and Victor may not be as ruthless as his father once was, but they're still dangerous. Like when Ivan and his son arrive in Philadelphia, they're standing on the steps overlooking the city, and you can definitely tell some darkness in the ring is about to come, because the man who killed Apollo Creed has returned. Yeah, Rocky's one of Rocky's biggest threats, and you actually can see the fear in Rocky's face when he sees Ivan at his restaurant and realizes he's back. And he's back for more. And wants to reclaim what he lost. And pretty much is starting to fear what happened to Apollo is going to happen to Adonis next. Like, it's really tough on Rocky in this film too, because Ivan Drago was the boxer he tried his hardest to forget ever since Rocky 4 and won against him. But he's back, and he realizes he can't escape the events of Rocky 4, and has to deal with the aftermath of that film. Tries to prevent Adonis from fighting Victor, but unfortunately it doesn't work, and it ends up being one of Adonis's biggest mistakes because he almost dies in the fight. And after that, he pretty much becomes a changed character after that, where he becomes a bit more wiser. And I like how both Rocky and Adonis have their reasons, where Rocky becomes a bit of a changed person with Creed after training Adonis, but he's still not over Apollo's death. And especially because he has to see Ivan Drago again, and he doesn't want the same thing happening to Adonis. And Adonis still wants to avenge his father and change history. And the emotion here is still pretty real in the film. The soundtrack, the soundtrack's not as amazing as some of the Rocky movies, but the story does make up for it. Like now, Rocky knew if Adonis would have a chance of being Drago, he'd have to train like Rocky did. So Rocky, when it's time to train Adonis, he'd go to the desert. Meanwhile, Rocky trained in ice-cold Russian mountains. Adonis this time around trains in the desert. And from the film scenes, there are some very cool elements from the plot that's easy to understand without making the audience confused. Right here, and while the soundtrack's still not good. Not good, just not as good as some of the other Rocky films. At least it still has some accordance with the scenes, and it adds maybe a bit more value. And meanwhile, Victor Drago on TV publicly still taunts Adonis, but he faces pressure from his father, who is enjoying the attention of various Russian delegates. And meanwhile, at the dinner, they encounter Ludmilla, who is basically his mother and Ivan's ex-wife, for the first time after she abandoned them after Ivan lost the fight. Victor is mad to see the mother that abandoned him, and he storms out of the dinner and belittles Ivan for trying to seek approval from those who didn't want anything to do with them and casts them out. So Rocky and Tony's son, meanwhile, are retraining Adonis in the desert in California, and the fighting from within, entering Adonis' body for the heavy impact that knows he's going to receive from Victor in the ring when that happens. And now the music for that plays during the train montage. It's all right. It's an all right song. It's not that great. I feel they could have just used a song from the original soundtrack for the train montage, and not a more hip hop like rap kind of song. But once the train montage is over, they go to Moscow, and the rematch is more balanced because a more controlled and focused Adonis exchanges blows with Victor. And Victor, though, is used to winning by knockout, which have never lasted past 4 rounds, but Adonis then sees this advantage and uses this and endures to having beaten from Victor, and even after his ribs are broken. And Adonis then, by the time it gets to round 10, Adonis goes to sequences of effective blows on exhausted Victor, leads to him knocking Victor down twice. And when pretty much then Ivan sees that Ludmilla's departing and abandoning him again, and sees Victor's upset about this, and starts losing the will to fight. And then even Ivan recognizes this, and now remembering his son's earlier words, and starts to realize what's going to happen to his son. Victor then is exhausted and concerned to receive strikes without defending himself, but doesn't want to go down. Then Ivan realizes that his son's life is better than revenge. So Ivan throws in a towel and decides to really call off the fight to keep his son safe and alive. Victor is at first upset he lost, but Ivan calms him down, and he assures him that it's okay to lose sometimes, and embraces him. Like, Ivan now kind of realizes his son is a little more important than another fight, and revenge doesn't really mean anything in the end. So I like they didn't go the generic revenge route with these characters, because if they did just try to go the generic revenge story with these two, it wouldn't have much of a meaning. Really. It'd be kind of lazy if they did that. So it doesn't try to over-rehash Rocky IV with the final fights. It does something a little different. Now, some people may wish the fight still happened, but personally, I'm glad that the fight just gets forfeited, because this film's kind of more about the character than it kind of is about the boxing in this one. So then after the fight is forfeited, Bianca enters the ring to celebrate with Adonis, Little Duke, and Creed's other trainers. And meanwhile, but Rocky doesn't go in the ring. And pretty much then, Rocky looks at Creed, and him and Creed look at each other, they fist pump each other, and he tells him, it's your time now. So he's basically telling, my time is up. He's pretty much telling Adonis, my time as your trainer's up. Now your journey begins. My journey's over. Now it's time for yours. And pretty much giving him good luck. Good luck with carrying on his legacy. And he takes a seat to watch them from outside the ring. And the characters featured in the film are very deep. We watch the film, we see how the characters play the film to the fullest. You see the life journey of a boxer that becomes a world champion. At first, almost struggles with that, but then has to kind of retrain that and kind of see a bit more of the world around him. The sequel expands on what the predecessor was trying to set up, connects the characters better here, and it has a common theme of family and parenthood, and the shades of how that affects how each of them fight their own battles. And he also, seeing the Drago family dynamic, is also very creative as well, and trying to prevent the film from being too lazy and generic. Right here, and actually, kind of seeing the Drago's life as well was a very creative decision. And the cinematography is also very impressive. The cast really does well shine their own unique ways. Like the score by Ludwig Göransson, while not as strong once again as a score of the main series, but it's not a bad score. I mean, it doesn't overruin all the scenes. There's times like the score in the ending scene is actually done well. And Michael B. Jordan's performance throughout the film is terrific. During the scenes when he starts to improve as a character. I mean, sure, it doesn't have much originality because there are elements it does take from Rocky 3 and 4, like Creed's worldweight champion is kind of taken from Rocky 3, and some of the fights are still taken from Rocky 3 as well, and he also kind of borrow the train montage for Rocky 4. I mean, it still does have some of the elements it does borrow from the other films, but at the same time, it makes up for it with the whole modernization of Rocky at its peak, especially like the soundtrack does make for an almighty shift, like whatever Stallone and Jordan's chemistry with one another. The choreography does get altered, well, but it's still good. Maybe not now. It is improved a little more. even if the fights aren't realistic, like, it's Rocky, though. The Rocky franchise, when have the fights ever been realistic? They're like, that's the point. It's like, even some of the stronger films never had realistic fights. Even the first two films didn't have much realistic fights. If they tried to go over realism, the Rocky saga would not be too as enjoyable. So, now we get on with the finale of the movie. So after the match, Victor and Ivan have reconciled, and they go back to Ukraine and train together for kind of more proper fights. Rocky, on the other hand, full on retires for good and goes to Vancouver to visit Robert. And of course, when he gets there, this was one of the best scenes of the film, where as Adonis and Bianca are visiting Apollo's grave, he tells Apollo that things are going great and Rocky's doing great and stuff. I like how he mentions Rocky to Apollo at his grave, and now he's still doing much more well there. And so while this is happening, Rocky is in Vancouver and he goes to Robert's house. Like, that's the thing. I actually like they included Robert in the end of this movie, because that was one of my bad qualities with Creed 1. Because in Creed 1, there was potential for Robert to play a bit of a role in the story if they were going to give Rocky cancer. You know, like, there was missed potential in Creed 1. So I like they kind of fixed that and they actually put Robert in this movie, where he visits Robert, and at first, like, the person who answers the door is actually none other than Robert's son Logan for the first time. And then Robert comes to the door when he wonders who's at the door, and you can see the emotion on Milo's face in his performance when he sees Rocky at his door. And Robert introduces his son to his grandfather Rocky. And of course, Rocky comments he looks just like his mother. I really love that bit. This was a perfect way to retire the character of Rocky, where he's back to meeting his son, and he meets his grandson, and he comes inside their house, and he shows him this ball, and Rocky even shows him this ball for Logan to play with. Like, this, I really like, if you're gonna retire the character of Rocky, I like he doesn't die. Thank goodness. I like that Rocky actually survives and actually can just enjoy the rest of his retirement. He's now passed on the torch to Adonis Creed, who's going to carry on Rocky's legacy, and now he can go be with his son. And he's finally got closure for Apollo's death. Right there. So this was a nice way to retire this character. A perfect way to do it. He'd finally spend the rest of his days with his son in Vancouver and meeting his grandson. And Adonis and Bianca are visiting Apollo's grave, and Adonis makes peace with his deceased father and the burden of carrying on his legacy. And he and Bianca introduce what would be his granddaughter Amara, who now has a set of hearing aids. And that's how Creed 2 ends. The last visual thing you will see of Rocky since the character is retired. It's a nice way for him to go out on. Now, Rocky Balboa is a good ending to the main story, but if you're retiring the character of Rocky for the spin-off series, this is a good way to go out on. It's not stabbing and killing Han Solo, not Luke Skywalker, not Princess Leia. This actually feels like a respectful send-off in the spin-off series. Thank God. He's finally let Creed carry on his legacy. He wishes him luck and bids him farewell. And he goes back to his son. Wrap it up there. You don't need to bring Rocky back. Let it be with this movie. And Adonis makes peace with Apollo at his grave and introduces him in spirit to his granddaughter. And for a while before Creed 3 came out, if this had ended up being the final Creed movie, then you know what? I probably wouldn't have minded that, because this wouldn't have been bad of a send-off to both these characters, but Creed 3, as much as I wasn't excited for it at first, did end up being thankfully better, and at least gave Adonis one last closure. But Creed 3 is another review. Creed 3 is the next review. More on Creed 3 in that review. Alright, so now do I have any bad qualities with Creed 2? Well, yeah, I do. Like Creed 1, The movie does still borrow too much elements from Rocky 3 and 4. I will admit that, while Creed 1 borrowed elements from Rocky 1 and 2. And there are some people that probably would be uncomfortable with Drago getting a kind of redemption story arc because this was the same guy that did murder Apollo and was actually very ruthless and merciless in Rocky 4. But it's kind of decently handled well here because, to be fair, Ivan Drago's a lot older. He's retired now as well. It makes sense for him to be a little less ruthless and kind of a bit more sympathetic because he's up there in age too. Right there. And he's kind of, and for a while seems like he is wanting revenge for losing that fight, but then he realizes it's destroying his family stuff, and he pretty much pulls Victor out of the fight to avoid losing him. And now some may find that a little anticlimactic, but to be fair, I didn't think it was anticlimactic. And now, with Bianca and Adonis, their romance is better. Though I feel like there should have been a bit more scenes between her and Rocky. That's what I think. Kind of more scenes between Rocky and his goddaughter, infant, that could be explored a little bit more. Other than those, Creed 2, I would say, is an improvement over Creed 1. That is worth watching and honestly does things better. So in the end, Creed 2 is worth watching and buying for the Rocky collection for sure, no doubt, if you want to see them resolve the aftermath of 4. Anyways, that's it for my view of Creed 2, and if we're going to rank Creed 2, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you want to see the aftermath of Rocky 4, and want to see the torch pass complete peacefully, then I would watch and buy Creed 2 for your collection for sure, no doubt. And if we're going to grade Creed 2, I'm going to give Creed 2 an 8.5 out of 10. Alright guys, now I want to know in the comments down below what you guys think about Creed 2, whether you love this movie or whether you thought this movie was worse than Creed 2 and thought the film was not great. And until then guys, that will be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. And if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.